In this video, I'm going to show you how to use the Lost Vape Quest Centaurus B80 AIO. Welcome back to Vampire Vape. My name's Andrew, and yes, we are going to be looking at the Borrow device today by Lost Vape Quest. There's quite a lot to go through, so let's go down and take a look. So in front of me, I have the Lost Vape Quest Centaurus B80 AIO. Is certainly quite a long name and a bit of a mouthful, but this is it just here. So this is a single 18650 Borrow device. So it takes a Borrow tank, which we explained in the unboxing. If you don't know what that is, that's just the sort of name of these tanks, which is like a standard tank size that fits any device which is a Borrow device, right? So you have a rebuildable that comes in the box, and then you also have a pre-built coil system Borrow tank as well, but it does not come with an 18650, so we will need one of those today. So I have one just here, and that's what we'll be using today. So the device itself, we've got a button on the front there. We've got two adjustment buttons there, as well as a screen, but you can't get to those unless you take this faceplate off, as well as a USB-C charging port. So you just flick it up from the base, and that removes the first door. The other side is the same, but you know, it's just got airflow holes here, so you can't really do anything on this side. So you just take that one off, that's the other door removed. And that reveals then the Borrow tank so that you can fill it. And then obviously the battery bay just there, as well as the adjustment buttons. So on this side, you can't just get the Borrow out, it won't just fall out or anything, because it's actually locked into place with this. So they give you a handy tool just here to stick in the top. They call it a spanner, but it's really a screwdriver. And you pop that in there and unscrew it like so. And then you can just, you know, pull this out. And this is actually where your drip tip is going to go as well, but we'll do that later. They give you two in the box. So that you don't want to lose, because you don't get a spare in the box. These are standard. I'm sure you can just use any Borrow threaded 510 piece just here, but yes, it only comes with one in the box. Now you've removed that, now you can just tap out the Borrow, and that reveals this. Now this is the pre-built coil tank. So this is more like a traditional tank where you buy coils and pop them in, and you can use it that way if you want to. The other one is the rebuildable Borrow, so it's got a deck in there, and we'll take a look at that in a second. And since we're talking about that, let's just take a look at it now. So this is the rebuildable deck. For those that know, you know. If you don't know, you don't know. But if you do know, then you know that you'll be building on this with your own wire and your own cotton. You basically are making pre-built coils, right? So you're making them yourselves instead of buying these. So this is a sort of high-end, sort of nerdy thing. So there's your deck. So you've got your positive and negative contacts just there. It's peak insulated as well, and you can put your leads in either side. It's a very tiny little deck. As a very experienced builder myself, this looks like a very easy deck to build on. There's some nice airflow gaps there, some gaps to, you know, put your wicks in there as well, and you've got the airflow pin in the center and the base, which you can remove through the base there with a flathead, and they actually give you different ones inside the box. So you've probably got some tighter options as well as a wider option as well, so that you can tailor your airflow, because the airflow on this is dictated by this pin. There is no adjustable airflow here, so it all comes down to that pin just there and how that airflow is going to react. So for those that know, again, I'm just going through this for them really. If you don't know what I'm talking about here, then don't worry yourself, you know, but you do have a chimney inside here that is removable so that you can wash the Borrow, and you also get a 510 adapter so that you can actually take this base off. So let's just take that off like so, and you can screw this into the 510 adapter so that you can actually build on the device. So you can build and pulse your coils and everything else on this device. You don't have to have a separate mod. So very convenient for the builders and the advanced vapors out there. But again, if you're not an advanced vapor, then we'll be looking at this one instead. And this is just an easy way. I mean, I must admit, even for myself that's been building coils for well over 10 years now, I kind of default to pre-built coils because I'm lazy now. So there we go. Because pre-built coils now are so good compared to what they were 10, 15 years ago, this is just, you know, for me, you know, that wants a bit of a time save, mesh coils are the way to go. And again, it's just about laziness. But yes, for the more sort of beginner or intermediate vapor, this is going to give you a really good experience with a device like this. And I'm very happy that Lost Vape Quest have actually included one of each for both types of vapors. I do think that's great. So we've got two different coils that come inside the box. We've got a 0.15 and a 0.2 ohm coil. So they're both sub-ohm. So, you know, for the mouth-to-lung vapors out there, I'm sorry, you don't get one of those in the box. And let's just take a look at them now. So the 0.15 is 60 to 80 watts, and the 0.2 is actually 40 to 60 watts. So let's go with the 0.2, just because of course we'll be using a lot of e-liquid just here. So I'm going to show you how to prime and prep this coil ready to be put inside the device. So we've selected the 0.2 ohm coil, and let's just open it up. So you just pop it out of the blister pack there, and that reveals your coil just here. Now we will need to get some e-liquid on this. So I'm going to just get my e-liquid, which is going to be sub-ohm e-liquid, which will be 70-30 in ratio. So 70% VG, because it's sub-ohm, we need to make sure it's a thicker e-liquid. You don't want to be using little 10 mils, which are going to be 50-50. You want a thicker, mainly the bottles that come in the 50 mil or the 100 mil sizes. And I'd recommend that you put 2 to 3 drops of e-liquid on on all of these wicking windows just here. Don't put any down the center, just put them around the sides, and then you're going to fit the coil in. So I've been taking the airflow off and then simply getting the coil and pushing it in. Very easy to do, you can't do it wrong, and then putting the airflow back on over it, just because it's a bit easier to navigate that way. Fill it up and wait 5 minutes, and then you're ready to vape. It's now magically filled itself up, and we've got a full tank here. I recommend that you fill it all the way to the very top and then leave that for a minimum of 5 minutes. Best case scenario would be 10 minutes, just to really let that coil inside fully saturate. Because if you just fill it up and even wait, 20 seconds or something like that, it's not enough time for that cotton to fully saturate, and you will burn that coil out, which means you will need to replace it. So give it a good 5 minutes. If you can, wait 10 minutes, and then you'll be ready to vape. And that's just going to prolong the life of that coil. And I'd also recommend that you never let the e-liquid drop down below the level of the wicking holes. So always keep it topped up. I would say once you see it about a quarter full, just top it up, and then you'll be getting the best life out of these coils. So now we've got it filled and we're still prepping it and priming it, waiting for it to saturate. Let's put it inside the device. So this is our device. We've got our contacts just there, which is going to make contact with the base there, which is just directly the coil. So we're going to get it. You want to face the wicking, the filling port outwardly so that you can easily fill it up in future, and you just slide it in like that. That's it. But of course we need to lock it down now, so you need to get your 510 thread just here. I normally start it off a little bit just to make sure it's not cross-threaded, and then get your little tool, or if you don't have one, a 20p piece or anything like that, or a penny, just get that in there and screw it down. Now what I'd recommend is that you fully tighten this down. So make sure it's, like I say, not over tighten it. You don't want to be wrenching it like really tight as hard as you can. You want it snug. So once you feel a bit of pressure there, give it another half turn just to make sure that it's fully locked in there, because what that's doing is pushing the tank down onto those contacts, because there is a bit of a gap at the top there. So there is a gap here. If you don't lock it down, that tank will be floating off the contacts and getting an intermediate contact just there, and it might not register. The device might say no coil or whatever, and then you'll be having a bad experience when you're trying to vape it. So with borrow devices of any type like this, always give it that little bit of an extra turn, almost to the point where you're over tightening it, but you're not, So once it goes a bit stiff, just give it a quarter turn or a half turn until it sort of locks out. And that generally fixes most problems with devices, borrow devices, where it says no atomizer or bad connection or whatever. It's generally because people aren't tightening this down enough. If you just did that finger tight, there's no way you could get that tight enough to lock that into place. So use a penny or this, if you've got one of these Lost Vape spanners that's a screwdriver, and pop that in there, and then you're good to go. So we've done on this side. So what we can do now is get this. Oh, and before so, you can set the airflow. I've set that down to probably about 20% open, because because I personally like a really hot vape. But yes, so you can just slide that around as you go, you know, but once you put the faceplate on just here, then you're sort of set, you know, like you won't be able to adjust it until you take this off. This only goes on one way. You want the airflow holes lined up with the base of the borrow tank there where the airflow holes are. Now we're onto the other side. So we've got our button just here, got adjustment buttons here and a screen and a charge port. Now we need to get our battery, which does not come included, but this is an 18650 battery. So you want to make sure you've got one of those and be careful with the battery because you've got a positive on the top and a negative on the bottom. If you have any nicks or dents or anything like that in the wrap, the rest of the battery is a negative. If metal comes into contact there, it will short out and these can be dangerous. So be careful with these. Make sure you always inspect your wrap, you know, every now and again. If you're leaving the battery inside here and just charging it through the device and you've got a brand new battery, you're probably going to be fine because it's never going in and out, you know, so you're not going to be tearing it. But if you're using a pre-loved battery, let's say, just make sure you give it a once over and that everything's fine. I will say that Lost Vape have kind of accounted for that because the internals are plastic, so you are safe, you know, so you've just got the positive and negative here, the pins, which are going to connect it. But yes, so what we need to do is decide which way round the battery needs to go. So we can see that there's a negative symbol just there. So that means I've got the battery up the wrong way round. So I'm going to turn it this way so that the negative is facing up. The positive looks like this. You'll see the insulator around the top of it there as well. And you want this little cabley thing, you know, out of the device because we're going to slot this in like so, or the other way around because the negative is sprung. So you're going to put the negative in first, push up, and then in, and that's it. And now you've got this tab now that you can pull out and the battery will pop out if you need to replace it or anything like that. Now, what you can do, of course, is with this little tab, once you put this on, you just kind of like push it over, and then there we go, the tab's just there at the base. But of course now we can't adjust it or get to the screen or anything, but I'm just saying, you know, when you put the screen on the front just there, make sure the tab's not like hanging out of the device, you know, you don't want that. So now we can see that we've got the screen just here and the two buttons and the charge port. So I'm going to remove this again. And now we've got the buttons just here. Now, once I put the battery in, it immediately turned on, but you can turn it on and off by 5 clicks of the button. So 5 clicks on, 5 clicks off, and that's going to lock it like so. Now, this is a very small screen, but to be perfectly honest, this is the only kind of information you need on a borrowed device like this. You can get ones that have got too much stuff going on, but I personally quite like a little simple display where I can see my battery life, where I can see my wattage, as well as my puff counter and the ohms as well. So with that screen and those buttons, there's some things that you can do. First of all, you can move the wattage up and down, or you can round robin it, you know, like hold it and it will scroll. So you have to wait a little bit. It doesn't kind of ramp up in speed, but it goes all the way down to 5. And if you press it again, it will go up to 80, which is the maximum. If you're at 80 and you press up again, it will go to 5. So there's that, right? So we've already seen that the device put it at the right wattage for the coil. So I believe it's selected 45. So let's just put it back to 45. So that would be ideal for my 0.2 coil inside our borrow there. So you can actually lock that wattage in once you've selected it by pressing plus and the fire button at the same time. So I'm going to press and hold, and then it says locked. So now when I do this, I can't adjust my power setting because it says locked, even though you're not actually going to accidentally do that because you can't get to it anyway. So it's just like a double precaution there. I wouldn't really worry about it myself because that plate's over the top of it. But if you wanted to really lock it in, then you can. And to unlock it, you press the same again, and then that will unlock it like so. Now there is an RBA mode for the vape nerds out there for this one, you know, the rebuildable deck inside this borrow. You can press the fire button 3 times to get it into RBA mode, which unlocks the resistance, and that will then be able to mean you can check your coil, make sure that you've built it correctly, and that will let you pulse the coil correctly using the kit that comes inside the box. So that is for the nerds there. I would say do not use RBA mode if you're using these stock coils, because it means you will burn out the coils because the resistance will be wrong and the power will fluctuate. So don't use that. If you see that this is on the wrong mode, just press the button 3 times and it will select back to this mode. So next up, the only thing we've got to do is pop the door on. And again, this only goes on one way because of this just here. Now, finally, we've got to choose a mouthpiece. So there's 2 inside the box. You've got this sort of wide bore one for sub-ohming, or you've got this one, which is exactly the same sort of bore on the inside, really. And, you know, this is just a little bit more funky looking. So we're going to choose this one. And it's just a 510 mouthpiece, so you're just going to push it in. I twist them in just because those O-rings are dry, and it's easier to get them in rather than like just brute force them in. You won't damage those O-rings as much. So now you've got this mouthpiece just here, or again, you can use this one just there if you want that kind of lip feel. It's just, you know, it gives you a choice there. So we're going to go with this one because I think it looks cool. And then finally, we've got the charging. So you can, of course, charge 18650 batteries, which we would recommend in a dedicated charger. However, if you don't have a charger and you only plan on having one battery, well then, you know, you don't need to worry. You can just charge it through the device just here. And because it's there, you can keep the device stood up whilst charging, which is ideal because it means the pressure and everything of the e-liquid there will sit correctly around the coil and will not cause it to flood. If you lay it down and charge it this way, you risk flooding the coil and that's difficult to recover from. So keep the device stood up at all times. And there we have it. That's how to use the Lost Vape Quest Centaurus B80 AIO borrow device. What a name. Hopefully you've learned something today. My name's Andrew. This is Vampire Vape. I'll see you in the next one. Thanks for watching.